So this is the library's 2022 year in review. We like to do this kind of at the end of year because as these years go by, it seems like they're going faster and faster. And because a lot of the news articles that are related to technology these days are not very uplifting, at the end I have some links to some interesting websites and fun things you can do online. So let's get started. And as always, if Mary has your email address, she will send you a link to the recording of this presentation, and she will also send you a link to these slides. The slides will be useful in case you want to click through any of the articles that I have listed or any of the more fun things that I have listed at the end. And feel free to ask questions at any point. You can always type them in the chat if you're remote, or you can just let Mary know that you have a question if you're in person.
Thanks, Tim.
The first one is blackmailing Congress. I remember I had sent Mary, and I think Mary had seen this as well, but I had sent Mary to a link by John Oliver, where he essentially blackmailed Congress over data privacy stuff. There's a Rolling Stone article, and there's also about a 20-some minute recording of his show on YouTube, which shows kind of the process he went to in order to find out specific people and how easy it is. That could be easily be a class in and of itself. But if anyone wants more information on that at the end, feel free to ask and we can go through the article together. Taylor Swift, this one's a little bit newer. I'm sure if you've seen a newspaper at some point or read an online article, you heard about the Taylor Swift drama with Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is pretty much the only place that sells tickets to concerts and such these days. They bought out all their competition. They also own exclusive rights to many of the large venues. So if you're a band and you want to go on tour and you don't want to use Ticketmaster, you can't use some of the larger arenas in every state. So Ticketmaster crashed when trying to sell Taylor Swift tickets. Bots instantly bought them up and started reselling them at well over $1,000 a ticket. So it was a big thing. And the FTC chairman said, Taylor Swift ticket sales converted more Gen Zers into anti-monopolists overnight than anything I could have done, which I find interesting. I also find it kind of disappointing that the only reason certain demographics might care about anti-monopolies and monopolistic practices is because of a musician, but I will take anything I get at this point. So I just found that to be a very interesting article. TikTok, in case anyone has ever heard me talk about TikTok in the past, which has been one or two classes. A newer report came out this year, and it basically says that TikTok is still not secure. The report was put out by Malwarebytes. Malwarebytes is one of the recommended or one of the anti-malware programs that I use personally, and I generally tell people to use. So they have a nice little blog where they go over various security news. And one of the bigger ones this year was TikTok. The reason why TikTok is not secure is because it is primarily owned by it's owned by a company in China, which means that the Chinese government has full access to it. So this means anytime anyone takes a TikTok video, and it will have their location, the phone they use, their full name, a lot of the data that's on their phone, it'll have all that tied to the video. So it's just a massive data collection tool. And basically security professionals are worried that it could be used as a tool for spying by the Chinese government. Amazon was in the news. This year it bought iRoomba. If anyone's familiar with it, iRoomba was a company that was founded in Massachusetts, so fairly local, and they created the robot vacuums. So like the, you know, I don't know, the 4-inch tall dinner plate sized vacuums that go around your house automatically. I own one by a competing company, but basically they're very convenient because they can go under a lot of furniture, but also you can just say, hey, please, please vacuum my house every other day, and then you don't have to think about it. Antitrust researchers and data privacy experts say it's the most dangerous, threatening acquisition in the company's history, which I just want to point out does mean something. And one of the reasons why it's dangerous, why people are considering it to be dangerous, is because iRoomba or iRobot, the Roomba will map out your entire house. In some models with a camera. So potentially Amazon could, or someone at Amazon could do something nefarious, such as just watching the camera go all about your house. But also it would just, basically track floor plans of an individual's living situation. The reason why it's kind of funny that people are saying this is the most dangerous acquisition is because Amazon has previously bought Ring. Those are the doorbell cameras, and also home security cameras. So Amazon has all of that data. Amazon also bought One Medical, which could give them access to your medical history. They bought PillPack, which tracks your medications. They bought Health Navigator in case you don't use in-network doctors and pharmacists. They bought Eero. I'm probably saying that wrong. That is a router system, so they can track all your web traffic. Whole Foods for your grocery trends. They've also bought Twitch, Goodreads, and other content publishing and media companies, which can track your entertainment choices. I'm not saying this is nefarious, but it may not be positive. Yes.
Tim, when did they create this iBot, the vacuum?
It was a while ago. So iRobot.
My son-in-law was creating those here for Jean Deach and her husband when he was back in 2002, I would say.
Maybe.
Yeah, he created one of those tiny robot vacuums.
Yeah, iRobot's been around for a while. I'm not sure when they specifically started producing the Roomba. iRobot also produced, various other things. Like they tried to make a conferencing robot, which is basically an iPad with a Segway, where it could go from room to room for conferencing remotely. That one didn't turn out that well, but the robotic vacuum really spoke to a lot of people, at least in my generation, who didn't want to vacuum every day. Yeah, it's been a while.
At least once a year, personally.
Hey, that's a good number. Growing up in high school, I had a German Shepherd, so I basically had to vacuum twice a day.
So, Tim, I'm kind of wondering, why do they need to collect data and send it back to some central database if all they're doing is vacuuming your house?
Yeah.
Well, it's not so much sending the data back. It's the ability to send the data back. So just like how New Hampshire is one of the states that sued Amazon for the Echo device, because the Echo, so the way the Echo works, just like with Google's device and Apple's device, the ones where you can just out loud say, hey Siri or hey Echo, what's the moon phase tonight? Even you can't possibly turn that off and still have the device be on. So what they do is they basically make it so that the device will not acknowledge that it heard you unless it hears its little code phrase at the beginning, but it's still listening in order to hear the code phrase. New Hampshire has one of the stronger privacy laws for children in the country, so children cannot consent to it. So Amazon was, listening to the kids' conversations, waiting to hear the right code phrase. So it's not that the data is being sent back, it's that it has the ability to get the data. As to what nefarious things Amazon can do with this conglomeration of data, I'm not, smart enough to fully think of all the negative things that can happen. Other people are way more suspicious of companies than me who do that. But it's just one more thing that Amazon as a company has access to that kind of can learn more about you.
Tim, this Kath, beyond
Yes.
Amazon, all that data sending in these machines, isn't it? It can be infiltrated by people who want to rob places.
It could be. Yep. So there was a security breach for Ring. I want to say a couple of years ago, but I've lost all concept of the passage of time, where people could essentially look at other people's Ring cameras, which could be useful if you were not so positive a person. Also, the fun thing with Ring cameras, and you can, find this worrying or not, but if the police request access to the cameras, Amazon will give them access to the cameras, which is useful. If your neighbor's house has a break-in, the police notice that your camera points at your neighbor's house, useful. But people are worried about the potential overuse of things such as that. All right, Mercedes. So many of you are familiar with Tesla. So one of the things that Tesla does, and what a lot of companies do, is it's cheaper to build tooling for one thing instead of two things. So what I mean by that is, in a Tesla, some models, you can get, a model with this top speed or this other top speed or this much battery life or a different amount of battery life. It's cheaper for them to just have one tooling process and make, two identical vehicles. And then in the software, say this one has a top speed of 100 miles an hour, whereas this vehicle has a top speed of 120 miles an hour. So one vehicle, but via software, it has it makes it into two different vehicles. Mercedes is kind of one-upping that, and it is with its new electric vehicle. It's locking acceleration behind a $1,200 annual paywall. So people are worried that this could mean other services would also be locked behind a paywall. Especially people are worried about some of the safety features. So the other thing that happened, I forget if it was last year or this year, but BMW started or was planning on doing a subscription for their heated seats. So it's like people are worried because it's minor things like that are kind of innocuous. And then they're worried that it's going to go to more and more important things in the future. So we have an article linked that talks about the Mercedes decision to lock acceleration behind an annual paywall. We have a couple different things about Twitter. Twitter, as you know, is that little blue bird, which allows you to tweet a certain number of characters in a message, and then people can view it online. Elon, who owns Tesla, regardless of how you view it, he basically made a bet that Tesla shares would go up whenever he offered $45 billion to buy the company. He tried to get out of it. Twitter said no. Twitter's valuation went down below 45 billion, and then Elon was forced to buy it for 45 billion. Twitter has lost a lot of money since then. And if you've paid attention to the news of Twitter, a lot of people are not positive about the direction it's going. The next thing with Twitter is one of the first things Elon did was he wanted to find new sources of revenue for Twitter. If you're familiar with it or if you've used it, you've noticed that a lot of people have a little blue check mark next to their name, and that shows that they're verified. So things like politicians or companies would have a blue check mark showing that, this tweet is from Wendy's or this tweet is from the President of the United States, that kind of thing. It made it official. People have viewed the check mark as kind of an absolute. So if someone has a blue check mark, they are who they say they are. But because Elon wanted to find different sources of revenue, he made the blue check mark into a $8 paid verification. What people did is then they went out and created a ton of fake accounts, paid $8, got their account verified, and then made tons of tweets that were not from the companies they were impersonating or the people they were impersonating. As an example of one of the worst ones for Twitter was someone made a fake verified Twitter account for Eli Lilly and Company, and then they announced that insulin is free, thereby crashing the ELC stock by $20 in under an hour. In case you're wondering what $20 stock lowering means, it means that the stock loss was equal to over $18 billion. So someone paid $8, made a tweet, and a company lost over $18 billion. So yeah, now Twitter has taken away the ability to buy the blue check mark for $8 a month. This also hastened companies leaving Twitter for advertising, because if you're a company on Twitter and someone, so for example, this happened to Disney, this happened to Nintendo, happened to Fox News, basically it became a less trusted platform because of this. Mary put this one on here. It's about quantum computing. Mary, do you want to speak about it, or do you want me to talk about it?
I would rather you talk about it if you can. I'm not sure I can complete sentences today.
All right. So quantum computing, every single year, you will hear more information about quantum computing. The easiest way I know how to explain it is computers these days use ones and zeros in order to do operations. And the thing is, in order to do an operation, you need a lot of different ones and zeros. Quantum computing basically says, I don't care about that, and does things in a different way, which is a lot faster, theoretically, than using ones and zeros. Security professionals and governments are always worried about quantum computing because it has the ability to do high-end math much faster than our current way of doing it, which essentially would mean our encryptions and encryption protocols would no longer be as secure. So if you've done any or been a part of any of the password security classes or general security classes the library puts forward, you know that one of the big things you can do to be safe is to have good passwords. And, for example, like a 15-character password, uppercase, lowercase, number, symbol, will take a computer like 3 trillion years to crack it. It would take a quantum computer, maybe a week, is the worry. So it would take all that security that we're using today and potentially make it relatively irrelevant. So it's a lot of fun. We get articles like this every single year. It really has yet to manifest, but every year they get closer. So people keep talking about it. And this article is from NPR, and it has excerpts from different security professionals. It's basically a transcript of an NPR conversation on the radio. Another fun article, Amazon has lost over $1 trillion in stock value. That is the largest number by any company. So no other company has lost over $1 trillion. I cannot fathom how much money $1 trillion is. I just know it's a lot. So that's impressive. In case you're wondering about some other companies, Facebook, now it's called Meta, has lost about 700 billion this year, and Tesla has only lost $600 billion. Again, absolutely insane amounts of money that got lost.
Tim, how did Amazon lose that much money? When everybody is buying, over the phone, over the computer?
It's just a lot of speculation. I mean, people will point to specific things that cause drops of this nature. The thing I like to think about is that it's insane that a company has that much value in it in order to lose it and still be a company. That's the part that's kind of crazy to me. Amazon lost over 1 trillion and it's still one of the largest companies in the world. So probably just speculation that didn't pan out. Amazon also, in a recent investor conference, talked about different initiatives it was lessening. So for example, they're stopping production or development on the Echo Dot. They're like talk to it and order things with the power of your voice tool. Maybe people cared about that. Maybe they didn't like the Whole Foods acquisition. Could be any number of things.
So lots of our created paper, fake money piled up.
That's one way to think about it. So are there any questions, or does anyone have any articles or stories that they have heard about this year that they'd like to talk about? Or would anyone like to talk about any of the stories I just briefly covered?
Well, who's working on quantum computing? If it's going to break down in a week, is somebody diligently working in some cellar somewhere trying to come up with something to counteract quantum?
Yeah, so governments all over the world are trying to do basically use quantum computing to create quantum cryptography, to create protocols that quantum computers can't crack easily. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not incredibly worried about it, mainly because the US just has so much money to throw at this. I'm not incredibly worried that it'll be left behind or beaten too severely when it comes to quantum computing.
So Tim, I don't know if you heard on NPR this morning, speaking of the Chinese using TikTok to spy or to track on its population. They're also using elements of COVID protocol to do the same thing, because they can the zero tolerance allowed them to really identify their population and be able to track them, and so they're using that as well. It's pretty scary.
Yep, all of this data individually may not be useful, but tied with even more information, that's when it becomes useful. And that's also one of the reasons why one of the earlier articles we talked about, the Amazon buying iRobot, raised some concerns with people. Just because mapping your house by itself and photos of your house by itself isn't that crazy, but when you tie it with everything else, predictive patterns can emerge and things like that. But I swear the world is not gonna catch on fire, to my knowledge, in the next year, so we'll be alive.
You're not going to encourage us to throw away our devices and go live in the woods?
I encourage everyone to do that for about a week.
Okay. All right.
Enough to impact their profits.
No, just enough. Well, that would be nice, but also enough to get people away from all their devices. And I know I myself find myself relying on technology too much these days.
Mhm.
Back in the day, I knew how to read a map. Now I just open up my phone and tell Google to take me away.
I agree. We lose our sense of landmarks with Google because we don't have to pay attention.
We lose
It is a
our,
lot easier following directions now.
we lose our sense of competence.
Yep. All right, so let's go to the fun stuff,
Yay.
quote unquote. Text to speech. In case anyone was worried about the AI invasion coming over and making fake news even easier to do, text to speech has gotten better. There is a free text to speech tool with various celebrities and other voices you can use. The one that's free that I was playing around with the other day is fakeyou.com. You can go to this site and you can get, Michelle Obama to read a newspaper article for you. Obviously, it's not the best, but this one's free, so it's not the highest end thing out there. The only thing I would say, if you want to play around with this, it gives you the option to create your voice. I wouldn't do that, but using other people's voices for fun can be interesting.
Tim, is that also, let's say it's a long article that you don't feel like reading, it's tiring on your eyes, but you can listen to someone read that article to you. Is that the point of that software?
Yeah, so basically, you would just go to Fake You. You would choose a voice. So, I mean, there are a lot of like weird ones. So like SpongeBob, the TV show, Plankton has a voice in here. And then you just type in whatever you want. And then you hit speak, and then it will render it and allow you to play it. Very straightforward.
So you could record that and use it as your phone message.
Yeah, you could save it and use it, but where it gets kind of awkward is, I mean, people are generally able to tell the difference in this, but you can do things like, I don't know why I can't find it. But like Obama's voice, they have this on here, Trump's voice that has it on there, and then you can get them to say things for you. The next fun one is 2022 was the year Microsoft officially shut down Internet Explorer. It's now called Edge. There is a website that I have linked, which will let you remember the joy that Internet Explorer gave you. It's basically just an error message that floats around the screen. I found it funny, but this is all it is. But yeah, Internet Explorer is no longer a thing, which is nice. It was very unsecure in the last years of its life. The next one is another fun one. It is a way for you to view Congress. So you can see the legislation that's currently being worked on in Congress, which companies are lobbying for or against the legislation, and which congressmen are trading stock in those companies.
Wow.
I feel like I'm having crazy pills, but like 2 years ago, there were tons of articles out about how all the senators, or a large number of senators who were privy to the COVID information before the public was, they sold or bought stock before they passed legislation about it. And then they just made tons of money. And then people just stopped talking about it. But anyway, you can click on this. It's called Behind the Curtain. So you can just see the House bills. It's not the easiest thing to read, But like Respect for Marriage Act, I honestly, I'm not sure which way that goes, but you just click on the little arrow and it will show you that politician Kathy Manning sold UPS stock, which is a company that's lobbying either for or against this act. So you can basically, who was it? Elizabeth Warren or Nancy Pelosi. I think it was Nancy Pelosi. There was an account that all it did was it followed Nancy Pelosi's um, selling and buying of stock, which is publicly viewable like the day after, and it basically tracked, and it was a crazy return on investment kind of thing, which is why people are talking once again about barring senators and congressmen from trading stock, buying and selling stock on things that they have influence in. But it's a lot of data. You can really get into it. And you can also, it's sometimes fun to see, the Eagle Act of 2022, 11 companies are lobbying about it. And then you can see all the politicians who are trading stock on it.
That's amazing.
Yep. I realized that I should apologize. I said this section was going to be fun, but I realized this section's probably a little bit more depressing already.
So that's
But-
a long site to go into, so that'll be in the stuff you'll have to look for in Mary's stuff when she sends it to us.
Yeah,
When
you
get the
can,
Slides, you just click on the link.
yeah. And it is very, I'm not going to say fun, but it's very interesting to look at various bills. And if you hear like news articles about, a particularly large bill, it's fun to go in and see, how many companies are trying to allegedly influence the decision and the outcome.
That's why they paid all that money for them to get elected, so they could do this.
Maybe.
Yes.
This one's a fun one. Search movies. So if you are like me and you remember a phrase in a movie and you can't remember what movie it was from, this is for that. So it's a website that lets you type in a phrase and it will show you clips from movies where characters say the phrase. So it's fun. You basically can just say any phrase. So, good night is in 91 movies. And you can kind of go through and just see all the different clips where actors said that.
I wonder how many movies Show Me the Money is in.
Yeah, you can find that out.
I will. I will report back.
This was way too many to actually go over. So this is just a database of AI tools. Someone put it together. It's called Futurepedia.io. It's just a list. It has links. It will also tell you if it's free, if it's freemium, if it's paid. One of the fun things, news articles that I'm not sure why I didn't link it, but someone entered a painting they created using AI into like a decently prestigious art competition and they won, which worried a lot of people that, if they weren't really able to tell that it was done by a computer, what does that mean for art going forward kind of thing. But yeah, there's just over 100 different AI tools for creating pictures. This one's kind of nice, colorize black and white pictures automatically. So if you have any pictures of the olden days before, the world was in color, you can take your photo and get it colorized.
Wow.
Which used to be like an hour-long process in Photoshop. But you can search for descriptions or features. So like voice. So here are all of the AI available things in this list that have to do with audio and speech. Yeah, it's fun. Feel free to play around. Find a book using quotes. Since this is being done in a library, I figured I should probably add something directly relating to books. If you're like me, it's kind of hard to find a new book that might be interesting. A lot of the search tools assume that you have an idea in mind of what you want to read. You know, if you liked author A, then you'll like author B. This one is kind of a different take on that. You find a book via interesting quotes. So you can just read some quotes from books and you're like, oh, that quote seems interesting. I'll check out the book. Or you can look up a book and see some of the quotes that are in it that people have found fun, informative, or interesting. Paper airplanes. This is a website with an absolutely massive database of paper airplanes with easy to follow folding instructions. Foldandfly.com. So you can do your basic one, you can do the basic Dart. That one's what a lot of kids would do in school. And then you can get into some of the really complicated ones that are folded a whole bunch of times. And then they will also tell you what it's good for. So some of them are good for distance. Some of them are good for floating time. Some of them are good for doing tricks. I'm not really sure what that means, but if you ever wanted to, take a piece of paper and fold a paper airplane in a new and interesting way, this is a database full of how to do it.
Hey, Tim, before you leave that site, sorry.
Yep.
Filter for just the expert. I just want to see what only the expert one is.
Probably tricks they can flip around different ways.
Oh, I mean, this one doesn't seem that difficult. I feel like I've done this one before.
Okay.
Sailor wing plane. Slow and steady in a straight line. And then it has all of these steps.
Great, thank you.
Company violations. It's another fun one. So this website lets you track major company violations which have resulted in lawsuits or fines. So here's an example. This one is for Goldman Sachs. It has 89 recorded violations. Since 2000, it has paid $16.6 billion in fines and penalties. You can see the reason why. The top ones are toxic securities abuses, investor protection violations, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and it will show you the penalty total. And it will give you the individual records for all of the lawsuits or fines. So you can, do a basic search, type in whatever company you want to look at and see the fines that were attributed to them. So yeah, another uplifting one. And again, all of these are linked directly in the slideshow. So don't, feel free to not to try and write down the website title quickly, because Mary will be sending that to you at the end. Here's an uplifting one. If anyone's wanted to learn sign language, this is an add-on for Chromium browsers. So those are browsers like Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, Brave. And what this allows you to do is go to a website and you can highlight words and it will show you the sign for those words.
Wow.
So if you've ever wanted or been interested in ASL, you can use this and kind of, keep it on the top of your mind. I'm definitely the type of person that if I don't look at something or review something for a period of time, whether it be a week, a month, or a year, I will absolutely forget. So this one will allow you to just kind of constantly be able to look at it and remember how to use ASL. So this one's a fun one, I think,
Tim,
and it is free.
Tim, this is Kath. Is there a site? I looked up Word for somebody this weekend on Google the word, but it just gave me the spelling, not the pronunciation. Is there a way to find a pronunciation for a word you're looking up on Google in another language?
I mean, Google kind of has it built in, American pronunciation. So what you could do is you could take this word, put it in a different language, and then Google for like major languages like English, Spanish, German, French, Russian, German. I may have already said that. They'll kind of have a thing like this at the very top where you can just hit this play button, the little speaker icon, and it will go through the word, and it will also on the right hand side kind of show you what shape your face is making while you do it. Slow it down, and then it will
If you
just
look
kind
up a
of,
word and then go back and put it into English, it would show up this way.
it should for like,
Okay, thank you.
maybe not, Mongolian or something, but for larger languages, it'll work. I'm also not sure why I picked communism. I think it was just a word I knew I was able to spell.
That's because you were talking about all the Chinese watching what we're doing.
Oh yeah, in TikTok. All right. If you have boring Zoom meetings, and I want to point out, I am definitely not talking about this one. It's a little puzzle game. So Knots is just like a game you can click on, which I think is kind of cool. It requires very little attention, and you just try and make the various knots. So the colors go together, click on piece one, click on piece two, click on piece one, click on piece two, and the knots go together. Next, you just want to make these into whatever symbol it's trying to be. So you can kind of figure it out as you go. It's just a way to relax. It's kind of like low effort.
Brilliant.
Relax or get frustrated.
But
it's relaxing.
yeah, I mean, some people really like crossword puzzles. I can't spell, so I don't. So this would kind of fulfill that need for me of just like a kind of a mind relaxing thing. So you just make the shapes. I find it fun. And that is all of the links that I had written down for this. In the rare instance that I've stopped talking before the hour is up, I'd definitely be willing to go over any of the things we just went over, or once again, we could talk about any news articles that I have forgotten to mention, because I definitely realize my thought process when gathering these may be different than other people's as to the major news of the year. So, Mary, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've given us quite a wonderful bouquet of positive and negative and scary and fun things to play with and to explore. So thank you. Does anybody have any?
Yeah, Tim, you want to give us an outlook for 2023 and things that you're thinking of doing presentations on, or where you've got qualms about what's looking ahead?
Yeah, so Mary and I kind of go forward and look at the classes that had particularly high, a high number of people who enjoyed them, and by enjoy I mean sign up for. Whether they enjoy it or not, we don't really track that. Maybe for reasons just to protect my ego. So kind of the more popular classes get rerun every year.
But are there issues of concerns that you see going into 2023 that you want to stay on top of?
Yeah, I mean, the things I always like to stay on top of, and the classes that, regardless of how many people attend, will always do are the security related ones and the kind of basics of how to use a computer ones. So every year we like to do the password security specifically. We like to do the internet security. This past year, we also did kind of a more business oriented security. So kind of how to, you know, if you want to spend a little bit of money or kind of protect more than just yourself in terms of being safe online. We did a class on, you know, physical things that can make your online security better. So I'd like to do that again. So I think the main thing that kind of changes year to year is the security aspect. And we have 4 to 5 classes that we can do on that. And if there's anything like anybody is thinking about that would be useful, we're always willing to add that into the repertoire. But you know, as far as things I'm specifically worried about, I'm not worried about anything specifically. I kind of try and live my life a little bit laissez-faire, and when issues come up, that's when I'll try and solve them.
Because you had presented this array today, and is there anything particular out of those, or do you have any insight into seeing something crashing down in January?
I think that AI is going to be a bigger issue. I think we're at the point where if there was a fake video of Putin or something, that could be a major detriment to the world at the moment. I think that American corporations buying each other up will have an impact. We kind of saw what happened to Twitter whenever they tried to go kind of not anti-woke, but they tried to kind of do more of the pure free speech aspect, how that turned out. So I imagine things will continue in that direction for a bit. But the big thing for me is AI. Quantum computing has, you know, people have told me that that's been an issue or is going to be an issue next year for about, you know, 10 years. So I'll believe that one whenever I see it. But I think the ease of AI for pictures, video, voices would be the main thing to look out for.
Yeah, Tim, I had a question for you. I'm interested in sort of software reading applications. So for example, you have the New York Times and either you don't feel like reading it or you're in your car, there's a long article. Is there an app or a browser extension that will read that article to you?
Yeah, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're the one who looked into it, but Instapaper, does Instapaper do that?
I believe it does. And I will double check and send that information out with the slides and the recording.
I know if you use Apple devices, they have a reader view. And I believe that reader view also lets you have Siri read it out loud.
Okay, that's good, thanks. I don't like reading long articles.
Yeah. The other nice thing with Instapaper, even if it doesn't do the reading, is basically you click on an article, you look at it, and you're like, I'm not going to read this. This is a 15-minute read. You can just click on it to save it for later, and then just makes it easy to remember to that it was something you're interested in.
Tim, back to blackmailing Congress. When you looked at that, I know you said it wasn't your particular thing, but is it, like the selling aspect is they want to get away from it and the going into it is where they're making money? Was it a kind of a distinction of how that functions?
So what John Oliver did is he kind of showed how easy it was without the privacy laws that I believe Congress was voting down a privacy thing that would have stopped him from doing what he did. And he was basically showing them how easy it was to find out who individual members of Congress were and what they were doing online. So
Right, and
basically
then
he
when you
did,
go to the, tied into the viewing Congress, that's where, you were just kind of flipping through it, but, to be able to read through that of where they're standing with something and making all their money versus bowing out.
yeah, I mean, his blackmail was specifically focused on, who was viewing certain content online, just using data brokers. Whereas the tracking was more the potential issues with members of Congress being allowed to trade on the stock market with what some would consider inside information.
Mhm.
And there's very little oversight or things that have been done to neuter their ability to, proactively make decisions based on their own financial benefit instead of the benefit of their constituents.
I'm surprised they don't have to put their portfolios in a trust.
I mean, Jimmy Carter, he was the one with the peanut farm, right?
Yes.
I mean, he did that. Whereas all of these other people are like, I'm going to be, voting on this bill, and then hypothetically, maybe that will make this company go up, or someone, is voting on who to make the preferred vendor of the United States government for X, Y, or Z. They would then have the ability to buy that
Right.
stock or bet that because the United States government's going to sign a contract with them, that their stock price would go up. I do want to point out that I'm not saying that people are doing it. Feel free to make that judgment call for yourself. But this
That's
just
how
allows
they-
you the ability to follow it.
That's how they end up being millionaires on 200,000 a year.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think their salary is that bad to begin with. So, but I'm just naturally not that greedy of a person, I guess.
So it'll be clear on there, because what I was asking Tim, that whether if they're selling out or whether they're diving in to show what's happening with their financial picture.
Yeah, you can see buying and selling.
Well, once again, Tim, you have given us an amazing amount of material to sort and play with. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, hopefully everyone found at least something that they found interesting in the slides.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. There was,
Thanks, Tim.
an awful lot there and certain things I keyed into.
And also everyone, if you're listening to this recording and you have ideas for classes for the 2023, email them to me and we will see if we can't incorporate them into our class schedule. And I'm going to end the recording now.